For Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think. A lot of football experts have proclaimed Tom Brady to be the greatest quarterback and probably the greatest football player of all time. And on that, for me, you'll get no argument. The man has appeared in 10 Super Bowls, won 7, was MVP of 5, is the only man to ever win a Super Bowl with the AFC and the NFC, and is one of only 2 quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl with 2 different teams, Peyton Manning being the other. You get an argument from me. He's got the stats to back it up. He's top 3 in passing yards, passing touchdowns, completions, whatever you want to call it. But that's not the problem. The problem is that this year, Tom Brady is having a reasonably good year. He's lost a game he probably should have won, but he's having a reasonably good year statistics-wise. And people are proclaiming that this year, after only 4 games, Tom Brady should be the most valuable player of the league. And that in itself is a problem for me because nobody is the most valuable player of any league after only 25% of the games. I don't care what the sport is. I don't care who the person is. Nobody is the most valuable player of their league after 25% of the games have been played. There's so much more to the league that has to happen that you cannot proclaim a most valuable player that soon. Derek Carr was going to be most valuable player in 2016, and he played 15 of the 16 games. He got hurt in the 16th game, and somehow that counted against him. So nobody's the most valuable player until the season is over. But they're proclaiming that Tom's stats, which are good and comparable to players like Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, and others, they're proclaiming his candidacy for most valuable player because he's compiling stats at the age of 44. Or because he's compiling stats over 40 years old, and they're saying, wow, Tom Brady's doing all these great things, and at his age, he shouldn't be able to. Why not? I've always had a problem as a sports fan and as a commentator when people assert that your age has anything to do with your ability. Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas came into the NBA at 20 years old, and Magic Johnson won a championship and a finals MVP during that first season. It doesn't matter that he was 20, he was just that good. Luka Doncic right now is doing things at 22 that other players when they were 22 didn't do. But he's not doing it, and he's not great at it because he's 22. He's doing it, and he's great at it because he's doing it, and he's great at it. I once wrote a piece several years ago when ESPN was lauding Dwight Howard for being the youngest person to reach 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, all the way up to 9,000 rebounds in the NBA. And so I did some research, and I said, okay, he's the youngest to do it, but Dwight Howard didn't go to college. Bill Russell went to college. Wilt Chamberlain went to college and played for the Globetrotters. So he's the youngest to reach those marks, but you're not comparing apples to apples. So I researched how many games did it take Dwight Howard to get to 9,000 rebounds. And when I saw how many games it took Dwight Howard to get to 9,000 rebounds, in that same number of games, Bill Russell had over 12,000 and Wilt Chamberlain had over 15,000. So yes, Dwight Howard was the youngest to reach 9,000, but he wasn't the fastest and he wasn't the best. And it's the same here with Tom Brady. Tom Brady is doing things at his age that people are saying he shouldn't be able to do. And I say again, why not? Just because you're 40 years old does not mean anything. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar won a championship in the NBA at 40. George Blanda played until he's 46. All of the place kickers in the NFL play well into their 40s. Like, yeah, I know they're place kickers. They don't get hit and they don't make contact. They don't tackle, blah, blah, blah. I got it. But just because he's over 40, Gordie Howe played effectively well into his 40s and beyond. We saw that in his 50s, out of shape, with a pot belly, George Foreman won the heavyweight championship of the world in boxing by knockout. So when did being a little older than the other guy make a difference in sports? If he compiled these stats at 22 or 32 instead of 42. Would his stats be mediocre or average or moderate? No, he's second in the league right now in passing yards after 4 games, and that's an impressive feat. No matter who you are, no matter how old you are, no matter who you play for, he's compiling stats that are impressive. The fact that it's taken Derek Carr 7 years and to be 31 years old or 30 years old or 32 years old, however old he is, to lead the league in passing yards right now, nobody's making such a big deal about it except for the fact that the Raiders have been horrible for the last few years. But for Tom Brady, he's done these things his whole life. In 2007, when the Patriots were undefeated and he threw 50 touchdowns, it was a big deal because they were undefeated and he threw 50 touchdowns. The fact that right now he has 1,100 yards, apples to apples, passing wasn't the same when he was in his 20s and 30s as it is now in his 40s when everybody's throwing the ball, defenses can't touch anybody, and nobody has an effective running game. So yeah, everybody's going to have 4,000 yards at the end of the season or 5,000 yards at the end of the season. Everybody's going to have 40 touchdowns at the end of the season. It is what it is in the NFL. But he's not doing this because he's in his 40s. Tom Brady is compiling the stats that he is compiling in the NFL right now because he's in shape, because he's smart, and because he takes his job seriously and he's good at his job. Kobe Bryant played 20 years in the NBA and was 38 years old when he retired. And in his very last game on one leg, he scored 60 points. He didn't do that because he was 38. And because he was 38 or 36, it didn't make a difference to the fact that he did it. He did it because he was good. He took care of his body, such as he could because he broke down a lot. He took care of his body. He took care of his mind. He practiced his skill. He became good at his job. And he knew what he can do. And a lot of times in sports, athletes figure out, okay, when I'm younger, I can just rely on my God-given ability. As I get a little older and God-given ability starts to wane, or my God-given ability starts to diminish some, I have to start relying on my mind and the little tricks that I learned over the course of time. And that's what Tom Brady is doing now. He's still relying on his body and his talent, but he's also using his brain. He's smarter than probably every other quarterback. He's smarter than probably every other defensive lineman and probably every other defensive player. He knows football. And when you know football, you can be good at football. Jerry Rice played until he was almost 40, and he caught 93 balls with the Raiders at the end of his career. When you know football, you can play effective football, and you know how not to get hurt. And if you keep in shape, you can take care of your body and you can be out on the field because, as they say, availability is the greatest ability you can have in sports. Tom Brady is out there every day and he's playing and he's compiling numbers, but he's not doing it. And it's not spectacular because he's in his 40s. It's spectacular because he's doing it better than anybody else, no matter how old they are. Tom Brady is the GOAT. Greatest quarterback to ever played the game. Don't second guess that. Tom Brady is the GOAT. Greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Don't diminish that. But Tom Brady is not the MVP of this season because the season just started. And if he becomes the MVP of this season, it will not be because he's in his 40s. It will be because he was the best. And that's very likely because he's been the best his whole career. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. And follow me on Facebook at Eric J on Sports 1 and on Instagram and Twitter at Eric J on Sports. For Eric J on Sports, I'm Eric J, and this is what I think.